On today's podcast...
Denny, what about this shoot? What about me? You do not want to blow it with this guy, your $1 million guy. What's the matter with you?
Then Denny told Sam,
Sam, meet me on the far left, blue curtain at the entrance. I'm gonna solve this problem.
Uncomfortable, Sam carried his camera case to the far left blue curtain. When he got there, Denny did show up, and he pulled the curtain back and he yelled,
Run inside! Run, Sam!
Run?
Immediately, Sam and Denny were chased by local in-house security who heard this and saw it.
Hey, come back there. Come on. Stop, you two.
At one point, Sam just stopped and confronted Denny.
What's the matter with you?
Hello, everybody. I'm Paul Hart, and welcome to Life's Learning Curve. This is Season 2, Episode 27. What do we do here on the podcast? Well, we're trying to retell those life stories that made us into the person that we are today. Good stories.
Unbelievable stories.
Frightening stories sometimes, odd ones, and everything in between. It's how we became us. Find us on lifeslearningcurve.org and subscribe.
They picked me out of the crowd.
A lot of people could learn lessons from our parents' generation.
You know, fill your rooms up with people that love you, folks.
Daddy was going running like a wild dog.
From childhood, all your stories, you remember telling them at a shorter height.
We would actually run like crazy through the fields.
Learning was a fun thing for me.
Old people that would grab you and give you that wet kiss. Ah, now that's value. Let's laugh and love life again. Hey, I'm glad you're with us today. This is going to be a real treat for our listeners, I believe. Listen and see if any of these behaviors have ever happened to you. We use our best critical thinking skills to maneuver our way through life, right? We learn through the good things that happen to us, but really learn from some of the negative or bad things. That's how we make our corrections. Today's podcast has to do with a prominent person from my friend Sam's life. Now, Sam worked for this guy, and as he began to work with him, doing video work, he found this gentleman to be extremely self-serving. He had that kind of behavior. He had a blindness to his own personal flaws. He also had these mega droopy moods where he just got sad or irritated. These were annoying traits that ultimately changed the way Sam saw and did things for the rest of his life. For the better. Let's get going. Sebastian. This is Life's Learning Curve. I'm Paul Hart, and today's episode, Worst Possible Choice. Stand by. When I lived in Green Bay, Wisconsin, in the upper mid-Midwest, I had a friend in media named Sam, and we met around 1991. These were our early days in media. You know, we were just kind of kids getting into it while we were approaching middle age, but I'll call us kids. We both did production video. And so we knew of one another, and we decided to network and kind of mentor one another to keep our skills sharp and also to divide business equally.
Hey, Sam.
And that way we were independent of one another's work with video, writing, shooting, editing.
What's up, Paul?
We would compare notes when we did projects. We bounced ideas off of one another. Ultimately, it was Sam who chose the indie life with a variety of different types of video work. At that time, I envied that because I had made the choice to work with a producer out of Chicago with whom I still work today, 30 years later. Along the way, the two of us in those early days, Sam and I, we helped one another and we brainstormed solutions to business like this. We bounced ideas off of one another and we were competitive, but that helped us thrive and we learned to try harder at each turn. Collaboration, is it good? See Lennon and McCartney.
See Ben and Jerry.
So when back in 1991, Sam told me about this man he had just
I
met,
met this guy today.
I listened.
He's different, Paul.
Who knew these elaborate and eccentric stories Sam was telling me would affect both of us? The man's name was Denny T. Denowitz. So when my friend Sam met this guy named Denny back in 1991, Denny was already a grown man. He was in his 40s. He was older to us. He preferred to be called Denny, which is a nickname for Dennis. Why not just Den or Dennis? Sam wondered. He was single, no kids, about 10 years older than Sam and me. Denny always had a middle-aged woman in the community giving him food, support, and shelter.
That's right.
He had a slight build, around 5'2" or so. His deep voice sounded nothing like the man looked. Denny saw himself as being in show business. Now, he was a former street performer. Now he was doing live performances and teaching movement, air quotes. A lot of kids took lessons from Denny once a week, but they were on presentation always, how to present yourself, but not dance. So the lure for many adults was that he, Denny, would get their kids into fashion shows at the mall or other openings. My friend Sam used to tell me just how Denny had turned his initials into his business logo, business name, DTD, Denny T. Denowitz, or DTD, Destined to Dance. That was his company. And it involved the children in his classes, the movement classes, to perform in back-to-school type fashion shows and that type of thing. Denny was not actually a dancer himself, but at times he would hire a young ballet female just out of school to help out in that area. Denny taught what he called positive movement classes. But just what was that? What was it that he taught in positive movement? I guess it was all about being loose and not stiff and not rigid, and as Sam used to say, how to become a human wet noodle. So Denny had a dance troupe, but Denny never actually danced himself. Not a dancer.
Not a dancer.
Even though he had a company called Destined to Dance. Just how to move and pose and loosely flop around like that wet noodle. Most parents chose to pay Denny by the week, and with that income, Denny was able to rent a ground-level, low-roofed studio. The community and his students loved him.
Yep.
Denny was entertaining, he was fun, and he was interesting, and when Sam was with him, Sam told me that Denny's personality made him want to spend more time with Denny. Denny always spoke of being one step away from huge success. And if you bought into his persuasiveness, you believed him.
Next month, at this time, we're gonna be sitting in a penthouse on Lakeshore Drive having champagne for an appetizer,
said Denny. Now, Denny was an idea man. He was the ultimate brainstormer. He had the idea, and he had the conclusion, and he even had the evaluation of how he was going to evaluate his projects. But he lacked the ability to put his ideas and choices in play. Okay, so one time in his younger days, Denny had a very successful stint in the military. I believe it was the Army, I don't recall. And according to Denny, he was quite fortunate. He was stationed in Japan, and Denny moved up quickly in rank, responsible, vigilant, and he was a strong communicator.
Yes, sir.
That works really well in the military. And he took a liking to eating raw fish, sushi, as it were, at that time when he was in Japan. But after the military, Denny got out with all these skills, and he chose to move forward, abandoning his military training and entering civilian life, entertaining as a street performer.
What's he doing?
Yes, that's right,
What?
as a street performer.
What is that?
Diverse. Okay, it was his choice. It's okay. His choice. So Sam explained to me Denny's odd and eccentric appearance, his look back then. In those days, he wore a huge bushy beard and a mustache that hung way over his upper lip and even below his lower lip. And he ate sushi almost exclusively. Now, remember, Denny had been in Japan during the Korean War.
Let's grab some sushi.
Sam often was persuaded to accompany Denny to the local sushi bars, and Denny still loved to mimic the sushi chefs and say things to Sam like,
It is special. eat these fishes.
And then he would push fish towards Sam. As for Sam, at that time, it was 1991, as I said before, and he was a young producer of media, which included being a writer, a filmmaker, an editor. Sam was just starting out, just like me, when I met him. We were both always keeping our eyes open for contacts and opportunities. So far, most of Sam's work and most of my work, we're doing commercial work. We're trying to find connections. We're working closely with salespeople who, unfortunately, they cared less about the content that they were making and more about making money, their final dividend, their paycheck. These guys love to skip out of contracts without paying. So Sam and I talked frequently about managing this and what we needed to do. So when Sam met Denny, Denny was somewhat older than him by about 10 years, and he stuck out. He actually was interested in producing good content. An extrovert. That's what Denny was. He was an extrovert, and he had this charisma like P.T. Barnum. He was a showman. He brought people in, brought them together. So when Sam met Denny, the following conversation took place.
So, you're that guy, right?
Yes, so what do you mean?
Sam said.
You do the filmmaking with the multiple cameras and you can do an edit? And I'll put it for TV?
Sure.
Sam said. Now, Denny always called editing
An edit.
which is like the people that say, you know,
Can you get me some water?
that's Kenny and edit.
Sam, I may have just the thing you're looking for that will rock your world. You're gonna break big in the industry, Sam. Stay with me.
Winking eye.
I have a lot of work that I can attach you to. Okay? How does that sound?
Sam gave Denny his newly printed business card and understood that Denny was highly focused on content rather than just making money. This was the beginning of the relationship with Denny T. Denowitz and the Destined to Dance shows. Now, because Sam included his business card with his address on it, later that same day, Sam was surprised when a huge, old red fire truck rumbled slowly up to his apartment that late afternoon in May.
Denny had 4 to 6 kids hanging off the truck like firefighters. A song from the 1950s blasted on the fire truck radio and the neighbors started coming out.
Hey, what's going
It was
on?
like a parade coming to my door.
What's happening out there?
When Denny came to my door, the kids jumped off the fire truck and they were in my lawn and they were doing flips and cartwheels and spins and throwing their arms up in the air.
It was like a circus had just broken out.
What's the flip? Yeah.
So there were a few red flags that occurred, maybe just subtle ones, when Denny entered Sam's life.
I got a fire truck.
But he saw none of them. I don't think most of us would. At first, Denny's charisma was second to none. He could make you feel as if you were the only person on the earth, and he had the deal of a lifetime waiting. And you could be a part of that deal.
You're a mover and a shaker like me.
Not a big fan of eating raw fish, or any fish at all, Sam and his girlfriend were invited over to where Denny was living with a very nice middle-aged woman who stood about 4 inches taller than Denny.
Hey Sam, come on over. We're having some shark on the grill and unsalted baked potato chips.
You're kidding, right? No.
Said Denny with a big smile. Healthy? Yes. Tasty?
Nope.
Not for Sam. Sam thanked Denny for his trouble, and he admitted that he just didn't care for seafood and shark. Denny scolded Sam.
You don't understand how good this is. This is what I like to eat. Healthy. I eat healthy. You just eat junk.
However, Sam did eat healthy. and he worked out daily, but was just not a seafood fan. That was it. Sam was finding out that Denny really loved having control of food being eaten at all social situations, and having sole ownership of business ideas. Sam just didn't know it yet, but many years later, Sam told me,
I tell you what, Paul, Denny should have come with a huge sign attached to him. It would read, "You only have one friend now, Denny." It would also say, "You can only do things that pleases Denny. You may not make independent choices for food. Denny will choose what you eat. Never talk about food Denny does not approve of. No other business dealings will be done in your life anymore except with him, Denny. And by the way, don't expect payment."
So let's jump back to the relationship's beginning again. Not only did Denny sell himself constantly, but he always had this vision of the next big thing. Kind of cool. He made choices constantly. New choices. Always had ideas.
Hey, Sam, listen to this. We're going to open a TV station just west of town, in that old abandoned hockey ring.
What happened to that? With an eye roll, Denny said,
"Oh, the owner never called me back. We'll start a mutual company where you and I share the business 50-50%.
What happened to that? Well, with a negative scowl, Denny looked at Sam and said,
"Oh, yeah, I'm kind of busy. I never got around to writing up my business plan. Too busy making things happen. Gotta make stuff happen."
Now, Sam did write a business plan because it sounded good.
This is good.
However, Denny ignored it.
Too busy.
Denny saw himself as a dominant connection to most all aspects of the entertainment industry. He considered everyone he met as his partner. If he just met you, you were his connection, his partner. Even if he only met you for a brief time.
"Oh, I know a guy that can help you with that. Yeah, I know a guy."
Sam later told me,
I tell you what, Paul, if Denny said that, "I know a guy," yeah, it could be trouble or someone reliable. Denny had a guy that repaired a 3/4-inch editing deck for me. I took a couple decks for this guy to repair. Denny said he was a pro. After 4 months of waiting for the 3/4-inch editing decks, they were still sitting in this guy's kitchen, untouched. Yeah, he wasn't really a repair guy.
Fix my light switch.
but for Denny, when pressed, most of his projects never took place or occurred at all.
All that? That guy never called me back.
He's no good. Bad news, that guy.
I don't know what happened.
Denny, what's going on? You know what, Paul? It's possible Denny just made up business from the start. I don't really even know. It took me a lot of years to figure out the multiple false fronts of Denny, but that whole time he remained this confident and strong presence, and he was so unique in how he delivered what he talked about. He was good at brainstorming ideas, but then he always seemed to have a hard time putting his ideas into action or making them come to fruition. You know, making things happen successfully.
Now, Denny became interested in Sam because Sam was a newbie just coming up in the world of video production. He probably would charge less than a bigger, more established company, which up until then, right around 1991, things were very expensive and quite hard to find. So Denny promised an abundance of contracted video shoots and editing prospects if only Sam chose to go with him and his company.
Sam, I'll be your contact with the world. You just wait and see. Huh? Huh?
Now, Sam felt really good about knowing someone was highly interested in his work. Denny, and I was excited for Sam. He and I talked, and we transformed all these ideas and media possibilities and tried to apply them toward Denny. Sam told me,
So, Paul, Denny wants me to shoot a couple of projects for him for free, and then he would pay me after that. This could be it, Paul. I hope this could be my big opportunity to connect with people at a higher level, make some good connections, and make some really good upscale videos, and some decent money.
Now, I have to admit, I felt envious of Sam that day when we had that conversation. I liked that idea of having a variety of work he and Denny would be doing. Things like commercials, fashion shows, modeling things, demos, trade shows, openings of restaurants. Sadly, what Sam and I didn't know was that most of Denny's shows or promotions or promises would just never take place. Once Sam began working with Denny, Sam stayed away from me for quite a few weeks. He just kind of disappeared. And I figured he was just busy, doing work with Denny. But later, 4 or 5 weeks later, Sam shows up and he tells me that Denny felt that I might be a bad influence to talk with daily. Me. But soon there was Sam sitting with me with plenty of concern and stories of what was and wasn't happening with Denny.
I think Denny doesn't want me to have friends, Paul, besides him. Every day, we eat only sushi. He wants sushi every day. I can't stand sushi. Denny wants me to thank him constantly, and I do. I am grateful, but he demands it. He'll sit there and say, thank me. Thank me. There's more.
Sam said.
Number one, Denny keeps calling me the brother he never had. He leans in his chair where he's sitting and wherever he's at, and he just stares in my eyes in total silence. No noise at all until I respond. Paul, it's uncomfortable and it's creepy and it feels totally controlling. Number two, Denny keeps telling me that I'd be nowhere without him. He says,
Sam, I have hundreds and hundreds of contacts that'll make you bigger than you ever dreamed. Sam, all you gotta do is be smart. Stay with me.
Number three, even though I edit all the projects, he keeps asking me,
will you be doing an edit?
I always want to say, you mean, will I be editing the project? Number four, Paul, this guy smells like raw fish. When he talks, what I smell is decaying fish. I really try, but that's all I smell now. And finally, number five, I've been doing free work for this guy for a month now. I need to be paid.
So Sam and I talked about how he could approach Denny about payment and getting a contract going, a continual one with 50% down and 50% on delivery of the product. Now, some of the events that Sam filmed and he edited that were legitimate events to be shot were, there was a fashion show at a local mall which featured Denny's kids from class modeling outfits, kind of a back-to-school type fashion show thing, and the parents loved it, Sam said, and the kids seemed to really enjoy that experience too. Another legit thing that Sam taped was adults modeling a line of sweaters, and this was done at a banquet hall, filming the opening of a food court at the mall, featuring lookalikes of comedian Jackie Gleason, whom I love. I think he's a great talent, but
To the moon, Alice.
this guy kind of looked like Jackie Gleason if the light hit him right. Yeah, kind of. And an out-of-shape female superhero from that time. So you got Gleason and the female superhero, and behind them, in this kind of parade going through the mall to head toward the food court, come on everybody, we're these happy kids, Denny's kids, doing flips and cartwheels and drawing a crowd. Come with us everybody! Woo hoo Sam told me that a crowd did form, but the curiosity from the mall customers was mostly about that these kids and these lookalikes, they were all kind of incompatible. And what were they all doing at this place?
Strange.
A side business, celebrity lookalikes. And this was after he ran into a tree trimmer that looked like comedic actor Jackie Gleason. No, like I said, I love Jackie Gleason. But I couldn't see the Jackie Gleason in this guy.
Hey, Norton!
Next, he saw a woman in a hotel lobby that he thought looked like a female superhero that was on TV about 30 years ago, if you added 30 pounds to that superhero. So he marketed them as celebrity lookalikes.
Denny's celebrity lookalikes.
It never really took off. Denny even had pamphlets made, though, and he really only had 2 lookalikes. But in the pamphlet, it was filled with lots of lookalikes. Apparently, these were people who had either moved, they'd left the area, or some of them had even died. But they lived on in Denny's pamphlet.
I got pamphlets.
Next up was shooting a commercial at a local sushi bar, the one Denny liked to frequent.
Get me out of here.
And apparently they fed Denny as much sushi as he could consume as payment. Now Sam still did not really care for sushi, and he still was not paid for his work. Sam had now enough material to complete a demo reel for Denny. What Denny did. The time was right. Sam needed to begin being paid for his work. And he approached Denny.
Hey, Denny, let's be fair. Hey, come on, I've done quite a bit of work for you, and I'll need to begin being paid by contract for my services beginning the next show.
I thought we were brothers. I thought we were friends.
Denny said.
Hey, Sam, here's what you don't know. People love me, and they love my work all over this town. Do you really want to be the guy that ruins all this?
And with that, Denny disappeared from all contact for about 3 weeks. Although Sam had no legal obligation to Denny at all, Sam began to worry about what he may have gotten himself into. One day, Denny reemerged. It was many weeks later, and he was his old confident, happy self. He told Sam he had some great news for him, and he would treat Sam and his girlfriend to a Cubs game in Chicago. Sam was really into the Cubs that season, I remember, and he quickly accepted the invitation. Like many Chicagoans, Denny liked to sit in center field, the center field bleachers, the bleacher bums, where you could bring in your own food, you could bring a cooler, and the seats were less pricey than in the ballpark. As Sam retold it to me,
So Denny brought in his big old cooler. The summer sun was baking us that day. It was a hot one. The Cubbies took the field, and I could feel the heat was making me kind of, lightheaded. At the same time, Denny bought me a beer, which was nice, but it was warm from the day's heat. So warm beer, being lightheaded already, and the oppressive sun were nothing until Denny opened that cooler. Inside, raw octopus.
What's octopus?
Denny brought raw octopus. The heat baked us, and that smell filled the entire bleachers section. Denny pleaded with me to try and eat some octopus.
Try some, Sam.
It is special. It is special.
Octopus special.
All I can tell you is it was like biting in half one of those giant pink pearl erasers from back when you were in grade school.
What is that smell?
You know, that texture? Except it was like this eraser had suction cups I had to chew and swallow. My girlfriend realized that I wasn't doing well and was kind enough to get me some cold water.
Something die around here?
Denny wanted beer and octopus.
What's that smell?
And I thanked him for his trouble, but I just didn't care for fish or shark, and now I didn't care for octopus. That was when I realized something.
Like something died.
Denny did not really care what anyone else wanted in life. It was all about his preferences and his ego. I had seen that if you ever disagreed with Denny, he acted really hurt, and then he got mad. Then he walked away forever. Except with me. Denny needed me for his production work, so I spent the rest of the ball game sitting near a cooler emitting this raw octopus odor, and there was Denny acting all sad, sitting there moping.
Oh, even eat my octopus.
Every breath out of Denny's mouth to me, which was close, was like bacterial dead fish infection. The smell of our center field section permeated with this decaying fish and a garbage dump on a hot day kind of smell.
It smells terrible.
People
here.
began to move away from our cooler.
Let's get out of here.
Finally, the combination of the heat, the warm beer, the raw octopus, it soon gave me the gag reflex and a massive headache.
My head.
I knew that I could not work with this man again. By the way, the last thing I asked him was, so, what's your good news, Denny? His answer?
Well, I brought octopus.
It was now the middle of the relationship with Denny Tidanowitz and the Destined to Dance shows. Many months later, Denny called Sam once again and pleaded with him to shoot and
Do an edit.
on an assembly at a local grade school. The performance would be one of Denny's performers he had found. The theme would be the importance of reading. He would pay Sam. Curious, Sam gave Denny another try. But this time, Denny had met a man at a local park who said he had once been a clown. And he sold the clown this assembly idea. And he walked into the PTA at the school and sold the reading assembly idea to the PTA. So Denny would be paid for the assembly. At the school gymnasium that day, Sam was set up 2 cameras with sound from 2 sources. And as the assembly began, the man whose name was Dudley, the clown, was introduced. And as the older man slowly entered, Denny stood off to one side. Dudley was somewhat dazed and incoherent in clown face. He tried his best to put on a show. His confusion looked to be maybe a part of the act, and the younger kids laughed. The older kids were bored, and the PTA president was furious when there was no correlation of reading anywhere in the assembly.
Was no reading anywhere.
Later that week, Sam told me that after Denny saw the edited tape of Dudley the clown, he told Sam,
I'll see how many people want copies of this assembly. You can have half of those profits.
Sam was furious.
Denny, nobody wants this assembly. I've never seen so many mad people at a grade school ever. Come on, you got paid ahead of time by the PTA, so why don't you pull my fee from that?
Denny frowned, looked at Sam, and he muttered,
They didn't pay me what I'm worth.
Sam dismissed Denny from his day-to-day life at that point. But, again, it wasn't the last time. As the year passed, and probably in previous years, Denny had burned a lot of bridges in this town, and in the surrounding communities as well. People spoke of Denny frequently, and those who loved him were obviously in the early stages of the Denny Tidanowitz relationship process. Those who were angry, irritated, silent beyond words, had grown to know Denny's pattern of promises, bad choices, and non-payment. Now they were in the end of the Denny Tidanowitz relationship process. Sam and I could only guess that many other people had been lured into these escapades similar to Sam's experience. He couldn't be the only one. Denny's life unwound like a fiction book without a good outline. It was interesting to read, but you do not want to be a character in that book itself. Time passed. Many years later, Denny actually called Sam once again. Apparently, Denny had a contract for some video work needed from a man named Ronald, who was a
major player. This could be good for both of us, Sam. We have to film his trade show experience at the convention center.
And as Denny told Sam, he would most definitely pay Sam this time.
Hey, I told him you, Sam, were my video guy.
But by this time in Sam's life, things had really changed. He had made a real career out of media production. It was 3 to 4 years later, and Sam headed up a mid-sized self-owned business that produced demos and final cuts for 3 manufacturing firms in the Green Bay area. Business was brimming and plentiful. Now, Sam's professional career only improved after the Denny T. Denowitz ego experience.
That's me.
Knowing that Denny would most likely not ever actually pay Sam, Sam was curious to just follow Denny's process. And he saw the gig as an opportunity to see the sequence of missteps and watch and maybe determine just how Denny's projects unraveled. Denny told Sam this unbelievable, yet it was a true story.
Yeah, I was getting some ice cream, just doing my thing, when a guy I was talking to, kind of chatting up in a suit, his name was Ronald. He was at a local ice cream shop last week in West Green Bay. I've kind of turned on the charm and the charisma, and listen to this, Sam, it finally paid off for real. After listening to my thing, the positive, upbeat, smart, full of energy, this guy's great thing. This guy, Ronald, volunteered to wire me $1 million. But I have to make a profit and return 100% of his money back to him in 3 years. But after that, I'd have my own business with the profits I make beyond Ronald's investment. This guy Ronald just dug my vibe, Sam.
So Denny soon began to create this list. It was a list of possible opportunities or options that he could invest or build from this $1 million. And he actually shared these ideas with Sam. Unusual, but okay. So out of 20 ideas for product development, Sam saw a few that were very possible and very impressive. Now, several were smartphone apps and a few were technology based. And that was when Sam told me something that I've never forgot, and probably one of the big reasons I'm doing this podcast today. Sam told me,
Paul, based on everything I know about Denny, he will take this list of product options and he will choose the absolute worst possible option. He is extremely weak in this area. A good brainstormer, a good evaluator, but a bad choice maker.
So what did Denny choose to develop and sell? I'll tell you, but it's going to be right after this connected story you have to hear before the product is revealed.
Listen to this.
Remember Ronald, who he had met at the ice cream shop. Ronald wanted his booth at the convention shot so people could see what he was doing and it would enhance his product, etc. So that was originally why Denny came to Sam.
I've got my video guy.
So the process was Denny was to have a press pass waiting for Sam and his equipment at the entrance of the convention center. And this pass would get Sam access to the convention center main floor of the huge invitation-only trade show in Green Bay. Sam would have to go shoot and then edit CEO Ronald's gigantic booth in order to demonstrate the selling and networking power of Ronald's trade show booth experience. Now, this would be where Ronald wanted to be filmed working, networking with other leaders and presenting. Sam knew the shots he would get, and he wrote them out ahead of time. Equipment was tested, everything was calibrated, all was good and confirmed with Sam. Until he reached the press booth at the entrance of the convention center. There was no press pass waiting for him. Sam used his cell phone to call Denny, who apparently had already entered the invitation-only event. Denny said,
Well, I got kind of excited and I used the press pass to get in and walk around.
Denny, what about this shoot? What about me? You do not want to blow it with this guy, your $1 million guy.
What's the matter with you?
Then Denny told Sam,
Sam, meet me on the far left, blue curtain at the entrance. I'm gonna solve this problem.
Uncomfortable, Sam carried his camera case to the far left blue curtain. When he got there, Denny did show up, and he pulled the curtain back and he yelled,
Run! Run inside! Run, Sam!
One,
Immediately, Sam and Denny were chased by local in-house security who heard this and saw it. At one point, Sam just stopped and confronted Denny.
what's the matter with you?
Denny, this is not worth getting arrested for.
Why did you take my press pass? You didn't even need to be here.
Denny said,
Yeah, I had an idea. Sam, I want you to shoot video of me talking to CEOs and other people in high muckety mucks, you know. I'll just chat them up and you can get shots of me talking to them. It'll validate me entering this new upscale world of money.
Well, what about Ronald's work? He hired you to create a video, for him, right?
Right. Do that too. He may like it so much he wants to hire you.
Denny was the definition of unscripted chaos and tremendous ego. So Sam took the shots of Denny speaking with others all over the convention trade show floor. He also got shots of Ronald, and he carefully, extra carefully, made sure everything was shot and logged. Sam left that day and headed back home to edit both of these sequences, one for Ronald and one for Denny. He had forgotten just how chaotic and how messy Denny's projects were. The following Tuesday, Denny came by Sam's studio to view the edited versions.
Hey, why can't I just pick them up?
No, you have to come here to the studio.
Sam knew that Denny might just take the master tapes and run. Denny arrived and he watched both of the tapes, and he loved the production. He liked the techno music especially. Denny was a guy who just loved techno music. That was him. He looked and said,
Ronald will love this.
Sam reminded Denny that he expected to be paid so he could hand over the tapes to Denny. Denny stood there in silence, staring into Sam's eyes for what seemed like a long time. Sam reminded Denny that it was in fact Denny who told Sam he would definitely pay him.
Remember what you told Ronald? You told me that I told Ronald that you were my video guy.
Denny looked at Sam as if he had just broken his heart, and then he said,
Sam, let me tell you something. You always were a loser, and this just proves it. Think about it. Who has the $1 million, right?
In one swift move, Denny quickly grabbed the master tapes and ran out the door, full speed. Sam didn't chase him. Even without needing the work, Sam had done Denny that favor, just to see Denny's process. And well, his process turned out to be chaos. This was the end of the relationship with Denny T. Denowitz and Destined to Dance shows. What was the $1 million investment Denny dreamed up? Apparently, Denny thought about this investment, his payday opportunity, his $1 million. What would he do with that? What did he come up with?
USB odor emitting computers. Huh? You just plug in the USB port, the I smell that USB device. When you visit the website or get an email, the scent is emitted. Cool idea. Genius, right? Huh?
Like I said before, if Denny had 20 ideas, he always chose the worst one to go with.
There's one possible lesson for all this, and it probably would be just because an idea is unique or it's interesting doesn't mean there's a market for it. Denny disappeared from the area for good this time. I have no proof, but I imagine there might have been some debt trailing him and who knows what else. Now recently, while talking on social media with a friend who had just moved to Phoenix, I saw in his friend contacts Denny's name as a local there. He listed himself as an entrepreneur in the fine arts. So, who knows? Maybe Denny made something big out of the $1 million. Maybe not. Apparently, he's in Phoenix right now, and I certainly hope he's living a straighter path than before. But mostly, I hope that Denny has learned how to choose better options for himself and his life. The other reason I wanted to do this podcast today was about a song I heard recently. It's a song written by the late Adam Schlesinger called Richie and Rubin by the band Fountains of Wayne. Now I'd like you to reference this song, look it up. Look up the video on YouTube or Apple Music, Spotify, wherever, Richie and Rubin. I don't have the legal right to play it here on the podcast, but I want you to know that every time Sam and I get together these days, we talk about our past and our youth and our ignorance, our total ignorance at the time, and inexperience. And we play that song, and we both crack up. We laugh at how much it reminds us of Denny. Richie and Rubin were tremendous idea men in this song, but they were horrible at choosing the best options for themselves. Check it out, Richie and Rubin. In closing, Sam's stories and experiences with Denny made him into a better businessman. I actually learned a lot from Sam, who always kept an attorney nearby for all contracts after that. As I said before, when Denny entered my friend Sam's life, he saw self-serving behavior, a blindness to personal flaws. Many times he was silently stared at in his eyes by Denny. Still really creepy for me. But it was these annoying traits of Denny T. Denowitz that ultimately changed the way Sam saw his life and did business for the better of all mankind. Changes.
Possible option.
For life's learning curve, I'm Paul Hart. See you next time. Our podcast is put together by producer Paul Hart with assistance by Matt Mayer, Bob Franklin, and S.T. Dog. We're mixed by Joe Wagner, technical director Heidi Cerner. Music and sound, as always, by Riley Hart. On this show, special thanks to Sam Rombuno and Denny T. Denowitz, and all the Denny T. Denowitzes out there making a positive difference. Don't forget our website, lifeslearningcurve.org. Some names and voices were changed for entertainment purposes on our podcast. Help us grow and continue by liking us on Facebook and listen to us wherever you're listening right now and practically everywhere else podcasts are found. I'm Paul Hart, and we'll be back soon with more from Life's Learning Curve.
We're clear.